Hey everybody, welcome to the Salty Seaman. Today we're going to answer a question a lot of you YouTubers might be asking yourselves. A lot of you people right around the internet maybe aren't quite hardcore comic book fans. Who the hell is Deadpool?
Dang, Skippy! Where are my manners? Introductions! Call me Deadpool. It rhymes with no school. Too cool, ain't no foolin'. I'm the best that there is at what I do.
So today we're going to talk about Deadpool, who he is, where he came from, and why the hell is he so popular, and why does anyone give a crap about him? And for that, I have with me a special guest to help me out. First, who are you?
All right, well, I'm Rob London. I'm Canadian, and I write for the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. So
Why should people care about Rob London?
I'm pleasant, well-liked, and am rarely late.
At this point, I would start handing you really obscure stuff that you really like, but I don't have my plaid pants on, so I really can't. And we start talking about everything Canadian and like how it ties into.
Well, he is Canadian.
He's Canadian. Okay, that's right. This is Rob London. He is the he is an official writer for Marvel. It's like a big coup for me, except I've known the guy since he was a teenager, so it's more like I just happen to know a guy who does something kind of cool. But no, today we're going to talk about Deadpool, and I figured, I could sit here and ramble all day, as I normally do, or I could actually get somebody who knows what the hell he's talking about, probably knows way more about MODOK than any human being should ever really know. And that would be my friend Rob London, a.k.a. Roland Bolon, a.k.a. Ruler Boulon, a.k.a. the Minor Irritant. So Rob, where does Deadpool come from?
Well, he comes from the early 90s. In the early 90s, a certain class of artist was really starting to become popular at Marvel. Your Todd McFarlanes, your Eric Larsons, and in this case, your Rob Liefelds. I think a lot of people are probably familiar with Liefeld's style. Big muscles, big guns, tiny feet. He's kind of a bit of an internet joke now, but at the time he was incredibly popular. Nobody had ever seen anything like his work, and for whatever reason, it struck a big chord with the comics readers of the time. So he was his assignment at the time was the book New Mutants, which prior to his arrival had sort of been you're a book about the younger students of the X-Men. And Liefeld, as he became more popular, was given more control over the book, and it essentially became at first in spirit and then in name a totally different book. That book specifically was X-Force, a book in the Rob Liefeldian tradition of a black ops team of superhero doing super secret missions that involved what had to have been incredibly loud guns. And into that came Deadpool in New Mutants number 98. He was initially a mercenary sent to kill Cable, the leader of X-Force, who had an incredibly, and still has, an incredibly convoluted backstory that Rob Liefeld had not come up with yet. At the time, he was just kind of a generic big guy with a big gun and an enigmatic past. And for starters, we have to look at the fact that Rob Liefeld is a character creation machine. And he came up, and still presumably comes up, with concepts for characters. He'll just throw them at the audience, introducing dozens of characters in a single shot. Unfortunately, he often does this by ripping off existing characters, and that's kind of the case with Deadpool. As I'm sure you can tell just by looking at him, he kind of looks like Spider-Man, but his true inspiration was Deathstroke, the arch nemesis of the Teen Titans over at DC Comics. Deathstroke kind of sounds like Deadpool, and as we later learned, Deathstroke's real name is Slade Wilson. Deadpool is Wade Wilson.
But he had a lot more pouches, right?
Yes, more pouches. Although you could tell there's a lot. Deathstroke was created by George Perez, and there's a lot of Perez influence in Liefeld, in as much as they both draw incredibly complicated costumes. It's just that Perez draws the costumes a lot better. And in
everyone would say he's a better author. But what was it about the character? Because he said this is the '90s. Everybody's a mercenary or a deep, gritty character doing violent stuff. But Deadpool has something that made people like stand out and say right from the beginning there was something that caught
what's
the attention of people.
and I think what sort of caught people's attention is that under an able writer as Fabian Nicieza was, who was co-writing, essentially co-writing X-Force / New Mutants with Liefeld, Deadpool is funny. He is, he's got the Spider-Man sort of sense of humor, but with a considerably darker edge, in as much as he is a guy with guns who kills people for money. And it was only later under, I believe, under the pen of Joe Kelly, when he got his own series, that the big characteristic of Deadpool came to the forefront, and that is that he is aware that he is a fictional character. And that sort of fourth wall breaking humor, it took a little while to catch on. I mean, his first ongoing series in the 90s lasted a fair bit of time, but afterwards it was cancelled. And he had to share a book with Cable for about 50 issues. Cable and Deadpool, which was, despite the origins of both characters, was a very solid read. And that's also where a lot of Deadpool's, the characters we're familiar with, came to the forefront. His love of Tex-Mex food, his obsession with various aspects of popular culture. And I think that's really, that Cable and Deadpool series is really where Deadpool became the character that he is now. He's almost a reflection of your average comic book reader, your gamer. He is us.
Yeah. And you said to go back to the Joe Kelly run. I mean, Fabian obviously kicked it off. We had, he stood up in New Mutants, later X-Force. He got a few mini-series that Fabian also wrote.
Yes.
The humor, it was there, but it wasn't what it would become this Daffy Duck kind of woohoo guy quite yet under Fabian. And Fabian wrote Cable and Deadpool also. Mm-hmm. So but you could see him kind of turning, and I think Joe Kelly and even get the Gail Simone's run a little bit later, really played into that.
Yes.
I don't think Joe really broke the fourth wall directly.
No.
He was more playing with it. The famous issue where he goes back in time and they just copy and paste it over a bunch of an old Spider-Man comic.
Yes, that's
is a favorite.
That's sort of a harbinger of what it would become, where he's almost aware that he's in a comic book, but not quite. And he's aware that the story he's in is ridiculous.
He's aware that comic book tropes are ridiculous, and he's going to point them out.
Yes.
But no one ever gives him the satisfaction of agreeing with him. They just kind of look at him like he's crazy.
Yes.
Which he is. Mm-hmm. All right. So in storyline, give us a little background on eventually we get a little under Fabian, I get a lot under Joe, and definitely later on, just kind of the origin of Deadpool in comic.
All right. Well, the Deadpool was, or maybe wasn't, it's a little complicated. He was a guy who at least called himself Wade Wilson, and he had cancer. And because he lived in Canada, we do have, of course, universal healthcare up here, but the dark secret of our universal healthcare is that we also finance the Weapon X program, which turns mutants and various other people into horrifying super soldiers. It's it's a trade-off.
Well, are you guys at least polite about it?
We're very polite about it. We asked nicely. He signed a bunch of forms. Yeah.
Sorry, we got to torch you, eh?
Oh yeah.
Stuff like that.
You
get a Molson.
Yeah.
I get a Molson with it. You get to put the game on.
We're gonna have to.
Leaks are playing.
We're gonna have to give you some metal bones. We're super sorry about it, but we've got these metal bones. We got to put them somewhere.
Put the Leafs game on in the background. Give you a Molson. You get through it, eh?
That's right. So anyway, the Weapon X program did manage to cure Wilson's cancer, but unfortunately, they also gave him a face like a squirrel that's been in the road for a week. This is retained. This is his utter hideousness under the mask. Comes and goes from artist to artist, but in general, it looks like an open wound. He is gross. And so, after some time with the Weapon X program, running the various evil missions that obviously Canada must do to cement its place in the world, he went rogue, became a mercenary, and after, initially basically being a super villain, he kind of decided to kind of be a superhero. Kind of. He's still a mercenary, but he generally doesn't do the really bad mercenary stuff. He is a semi-heroic character.
Unless the story calls for him to do it.
Yes.
It's like I said, it's very based on, I think, we said the artist, he looks different. Artist, sometimes he looks like Freddy Krueger. Sometimes he just looks like he has some pimples. But also every writer kind of has a different take on him.
Yes.
He can be full-on Daffy Duck. He is just completely loony. He's breaking the fourth wall about every other sentence. And there's totally no way you can take the story seriously. But it still works, I think, because you're bouncing him off regular Marvel characters who are completely serious and grim, and it still works. And other people kind of balance it a little bit more. They're kind of like give him a real human pathos. Pathos. How do you pronounce it in Canada?
I think we say pathos here.
Pathos. Yeah, they give him some pathos. He's still doing the funny stuff, but he's a little more tempered. I think the current run with comedian Brian Posehn.
Yes, Jerry Dugan and Brian
and
Posehn.
Jerry Dugan.
Posehn. It really, actually, I'm reading it, and I'm not really a big Deadpool fan, but it's it's a really good book, and it really balances the comedic and tragic aspects of Deadpool very well.
There's also a little part of that where where he gets his name. I mean, besides he's Slade/Wade Wilson, Deathstroke. I mean, Deathstroke versus Deadpool. I mean, obviously the name was they're just kind of were playing off that anyway. I doubt when they originally made the name they didn't have an origin for that name, but now we do have an origin for the name, and it's actually fairly clever, I think.
Yes.
You get into that a little bit.
I assume the initial origin of the name was that either Rob Liefeld or Fabian had seen the early 90s Clint Eastwood movie, The Deadpool. But no, the origin of the Deadpool name is that he was, when he was undergoing these Weapon X experiments, there was sort of a Deadpool amongst the people of the program, sort of, trying to figure out who would die, first or last. And thus he, as I think maybe the sole survivor of his current of the whatever incarnation of the Weapon X program he was in, he took the name Deadpool. Although, I was just about to say that Fabian is explaining the previous origin of the name, that you do the Deathstroke in the Deadpool.
Has he ever actually crossed over with his inspiration? He's obviously crossed over with the other half, Spider-Man. Never quite works because one of them has to be a straight man. You can't have two guys being too witty with each other.
Yes.
Has he ever crossed over with Deathstroke?
Kind of. There's an issue of, or at least an issue of Deathstroke, a DC issue, in which he has to fight or team up with a bunch of alternate universe incarnations of himself, and one of them is a very, very thinly disguised Deadpool.
Okay. So it's not an
official.
So nothing official yet.
No, they haven't really done an official Marvel DC crossover since I think 1997, and that just Deadpool's popularity just missed it.
So, what about his other media incarnations besides, we've talked about the comic book here. Obviously, that's where a lot of the fans, people who've gone Deadpool mania lately, have kind of picked it up.
Not a big video game, but I know he's in the latest Marvel vs. Capcom. And, he's up to his various Deadpool-esque antics in that. And although I am loath to discuss it, he was kind of in a movie.
Yes, if you only know Marvel stuff pretty much by the movies, the various X-Men movies, the Avenger, Marvel Cinematic Universe, you did, if you followed all those movies, you have seen him in the wonderfully brilliant, everyone loves favorite X-Men franchise movie, Wolverine Origins.
Yes, you could be forgiven for not realizing it's Deadpool. He's initially played by Ryan Reynolds, and I'm not a big Ryan Reynolds fan, but I thought he's a reasonably good choice for capturing Deadpool. The problem is
Until the end.
Yes, he's only Deadpool for about one scene before he is turned into a kind of weird Freddy Krueger, has knives on his arms, and also has no mouth monster. It's so bad. It's almost as if they are deliberately trolling Deadpool fans. I just can't understand the logic behind it.
And then that's what, and people, if you have heard people say like, well, they totally fucked up Deadpool the movie, and you've seen the one scene Ryan Reynolds in, you're like, hey, that actually he seemed pretty funny. Well, watch the rest of the movie and you see why people got mad. It was the end of the movie. He has his own video game.
Oh, right.
If you are not familiar, yes, he was popular enough to decide to make an entire mature rated video game, which has tons of, it's a third person hack and slash shoot 'em up. Gameplay is about what you'd expect from the type of game, but the draw of the game, of course, is Deadpool. He's giving his lines. He knows he's in a video game, of course. He calls up the studio who makes the game and complains constantly about the budget and the graphics. It's very funny. I think it probably picked up a lot of Deadpool fans itself. People probably didn't, who just were gamers and didn't even, maybe they played him in Marvel vs. Capcom, and there's a bit where one of his special moves is he takes his energy bar from the top of the screen, which is usually a meta thing, and beats the other character with it. So again, the whole fourth wall is always, in this game there is no fourth wall basically. The plot is a MacGuffin. And I said Cable's big into it. Cable gets his own songs.
Who the fuck is that? He's a man out of time. Who the fuck is that? He likes to fight crime. Who the fuck is that? He ain't out the cool. Who the fuck is that? But he ain't a fool. He's fucking Cable.
If you haven't heard it, Rob,
I surprisingly have not.
I YouTube it. It's about 15 seconds, but it's fucking hilarious.
Definitely. But I'm surprised. I mean, I think that was after their acquisition by Disney. They've sort of avoided the mature content stuff, but and that goes for Deadpool's other appearances. He's turned up in a couple of Marvel cartoons where he's somewhat toned down from his even from his comic appearances. Where
he's an Ultimate Spider-Man, which is about as close to a Disney Channel version of Deadpool as you can get.
Yeah.
But if you watch the beginning of the video, that's the scene where he's only been in about 2 animated versions.
Yeah.
That and
the on Superhero Squad or something, or
I don't think he's in Superhero Squad. He's in it was Hulk versus.
Oh, right. And then I think he also makes a very brief appearance in the '90s X-Men cartoon, like for a scene.
Blink turns into him when he's morphing through.
Right.
Yes. And he's in the Marvel superhero Lego game. He's actually
okay. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. And I think part of his cartoonish characterization that I totally forgot to mention in the comics is that he has a healing factor, much like Wolverine, which is really played, if anything, mostly for laughs. In that he can,
right. He can't die. He can go into any situation and he doesn't worry about getting blown up, stabbed, shot, even essentially disintegrated. He'll just come back. And there's actually besides having the healing factor, there's an in-universe tying into the movies coming up reason. He has a curse. I don't think Rob might even not know this part.